Commissioner Lim, could you please state your affiliation?
Martin Lim, I'm the Vice Chair.
Calvin Kohatsu, I'm the Fleet Administrator for Hawaii Electric Light.
Michael Kini and with PGV that company.
Steve Burns, energy consultant.
Steve Bowles, one-year water service.
Tony Boya, retired.
Julie Myhre with water supply.
Don Mindy from Research and Development.
And then our Corporation Counsel
Margaret Masunaga from Kona.
and our R&D Administrator. And our
Will
energy-
Rolston, Energy Coordinator.
Okay, great. Okay, excuse me, Tommy made a great suggestion and suggested we get Will to get his business done so that then it would be commission business after that. Thanks. So, Will, per our excuse me, and per the recommendation of not recommendation, but discussion we had at our previous meeting, what I asked Will to do is to submit, if you see his, that's the county's mission vision energy plan that is attached to the last minutes. And so instead of having him give oral reports on updates, unless the commission feels there is, commissioners in particular feel there's a particular area they would like Will to address, what I'd like to suggest is Will submit his updates, and that's where we're working on how we'll do that. But for this particular meeting, so that it'll be a matter of record, I asked Will if he can highlight the his handout, and then from meetings moving forward, he would just need to be able to iterate whatever is updated. Now, of course, we will definitely want to have presentations and additional follow-up information on commissioner items that Will is asked to provide, and so that will be above and beyond what this report is done. Would that format suit the commission to expedite time? Okay. So, Will, if you could.
So I have a clarification. Do you want me to, I did the full presentation at the last meeting. Do you want me to do the full presentation?
Only
again?
because it'll be a matter of entering into record. That's
Okay, great. So you guys all have the handouts? Correct.
Yes.
All right. Well, the County of Hawaii Energy Program, which we believe is the most, if you will, aggressive program in the state. And thanks to HELCO, we are at 46.7% renewable energy for 2013, which is quite remarkable with the diversity of resources that we've integrated. Geothermal, 2 wind farms, hydro, photovoltaics, and such. So anyway, we...
Sorry, what's this?
Yeah, you are. So anyway, we want to continue that leadership if can, and we think we can, because we're moving into major transportation initiatives. And obviously Kelvin Kohatsu, which you all know, is a leader in the transportation initiatives. So we're going to rely on him to help the County of Hawaii with similar transportation initiatives that he's done with the utility. So our goals are, and I should tell you what slide I'm on now. And Steve, you can just look at mine. It's more colorful. Anyway, we always try to do energy efficiency first, on-site renewables where they make sense, like the brand new West Hawaii Civic Center, which has photovoltaics and battery and electric vehicles. So a full, complete system, not a microgrid, but a complete system. Now, after doing on-site renewables, and Julie's already discussed the Lalamilo wind farm, which is another example of an on-site distributed generation, 5 turbines, 3 megawatts of power to pump water. That's an on-site renewable generation project that we've done. So if you want to do the equivalent math, that's probably worth about 20 West Hawaii Civic Centers. So it is quite remarkable. So if you look at the wind farm, it's almost like 20 big PV projects. Okay, moving on, transportation initiatives. It's kind of what we wanted this commission to be one of the three. The mayor talks in threes. Deliver three things to me. I've heard that since the day I was hired. So hopefully this commission adopts that strategy and we do three major initiatives. Transportation is one of them. Utility grid initiatives. Obviously, you know, we have aged infrastructure. Some of the infrastructure is 40, 50 years. If you're going to integrate all these renewables, you need to update that infrastructure. How do we go about it? People say smart grid, people say microgrid. The truth is, we got to do it smartly and we got to do it cost effectively. So I work in the utility dockets on approving and helping to consult with the PUC on what are the proper projects for utility grid initiatives. Energy demonstration, we sit on the NELHA board. We consider NELHA to be one of the best areas to look at energy in a 1 mile area. From photovoltaics to OTEC to biofuels, everything's right there in 1 mile. Not too many places can, you know, claim that they have that. And then at the end of the day, and this isn't long-term economic sufficiency in education, that should have been in the background, but really, integrating a lot of renewables, if you're not looking at the economics and you're not educating the people, you're kind of missing a lot of what you should be doing. And Tommy has been on me for 3 years at least to say that, and I agree with him. Okay, next slide. And you guys can ask questions if it gets boring. So you guys know fiscal year 12 to 13, we did the Green Government Action. Basically, the mayor said 50% renewable by 2015. We're going to hit it. So we're going to hit 50% renewable. Honua or Pepeekeo, however you want to say it, was approved by the commission. So that'll bump up the renewable percentage on this island to over 50. So we will be at 50%. By 2015. The LED lamps you see around the island have been retrofitted. We're trying to push more money to the traffic chief to do more LEDs. It's safety, half the cost of low pressure sodium. It's better for astronomy. I mean, what's not to like about that? The equation is light on the ground, lumens per watt on the ground is the equation. When you look at the low pressure sodiums, basically what the lighting experts call them is glow bombs. They don't put light where it's supposed to be. They illuminate everything else. And if there's water vapor in the air, even worse. Long story short, we're transitioning to looking at biodiesel with Kelvin's help. At our Fleet Association kickoff, we looked at biodiesel, and county will certainly be looking at biodiesel for its fleet and where it makes sense. You've heard a lot of talk in the papers about waste energy. We need to do something with the waste. So the idea is the waste is an energy source. Hydrogen buses. This is a good one because Hank Rogers and other people are stepping up into the hydrogen area. There's a hydrogen, they're making hydrogen at the ranch currently. So he wants to see more of it on this island, and there's initiatives out there with Rep Nakashima to do more of it. So, and David DeLuise Jr. has been very instrumental there as well. I guess in general, as a strategic long term, we're going to hit that 50% renewable energy goal. And what we do with our vast resources on the island is really kind of what this commission can think about. We've got lots of geothermal, we've got lots of wind. Do we make fuel from it? Is that cost effective? The next slide talks about all the projects we've done, so it's kind of what I just talked about. And if you want to learn more about the Lalamilo wind farm project, which is zero money from the taxpayer, approximately $2 million per year of savings, Julie Myhre can give you the ins and outs. She's been assigned that project. Basically, the mayor said, clear your slate of everything except for that project. And so basically, for the next 18 months, besides coming to Energy Advisory Commissions, I think that serves you. So we met with the mayor, what was it, a week ago, Julie?
Yes.
Yeah, and we had a fun meeting, and he's very impressed with the project. far as dockets go, the big one is the Aina Koa Pono decision was made. That project will not be going forward. And so that one closed, but another one opened. The decoupling investigation opened. So that's one that County of Hawaii is in. The energy efficiency portfolio standards continues, and I'm on the technical advisory committee for that. Okay, our performance metrics are always how much we save with each project. You know, what are we saving in kilowatt hours and BTUs? And we're really looking at good renewable projects like the West Hawaii Civic Center, where you combine PV with storage and have electric vehicles. That makes the most sense. It's the most savings you can possibly do. We didn't pay for the PV, so that was zero down, and we got approximately a 20 cent per kilowatt hour rate. And we got a battery from the R grant. I mean, you can't say that's no money down because the federal taxpayer provided it. But for county, we didn't pay for it. And we bought the electric vehicles. But that project has already paid for itself in a year and a half. So there you go. That's a great ROI. Kelvin can probably talk about the great ROIs he's had with his fleet optimization. There's a couple pictures. There's the West Hawaii Civic Center from the helicopter. And there's the Lalamilo wind farm. And if you can read that small, then you'll know all about it. Big Island Biodiesel, which, you know, we're proud to have I think it's the best in the world biodiesel refinery on our island. So what's better than that? NELHA's future. I'm on the NELHA board. We just did an MOU between HELCO, county, and the Natural Energy Lab for storage demonstrations. So plug-and-play type storage demonstration, flywheels, hydrogen, whatever. Come and test your storage. See if it's, number one, does what it says it's supposed to do. Number two, is it cost effective? And number three, can we use it somewhere in the grid to help with all our intermittent generation? So that was just struck. And then a couple other things were struck at that meeting. That was this past Tuesday. OTEC International, who had the 1 megawatt project slated to start construction this year, they have not made all their commitments, and they've negotiated down from a 1 megawatt OTEC to lesser size. So technically that means, because Japan was number 2, and anyone that attended the OTEC Ocean Energy Workshop, and I think Tommy was there, and I was surprised he was there because he came up later and said you did good, so I appreciated that. I was like, if he was in the audience, maybe I'd be like, oh, maybe I'd do bad. But so anyway, thank you, Tommy, for attending that. That's a strategic relationship. Also, when Tommy was in Japan, we actually deployed him to go and meet some of those people over in the Japanese government, and he willingly did. So this is exciting. Japan moves up to number 1, and if Japan can find the money, there's going to be a partnership with the County of Hawaii, which is what we strategically started out to work on 3 years ago. This is kind of a big deal. As I mentioned, the Lalamilo wind farm schedule was presented to the mayor. Julie is 99% of her hours will be spent on that. Zonar quote was, what? Sorry.
Sure.
So the Zonar quote was sent to me, and I need to discuss with my directors on going forward and how we do an RFP on that. And then Steve Bowles was kind enough to invite me to Koaniki to see like the cutting edge of how you can do reverse osmosis with 6 wells, right? 8 wells feeding into an RO and basically going into a reservoir, 10 million gallons?
Yeah.
10 million gallons, and they can use 5 million because it's a feature of the golf course to water the golf course. So I was very impressed, and then very impressed with the possible applications around the island. So I thank Steve for taking the time to do that. That's it.
Questions, comments?
Good job.
That scares me.
By the way, just to update, one of the things, and it's this is actually a future discussion item, but I do want to, with the commissioners, okay, I do believe it's a tremendous opportunity if we can to, and this is something we need to, but I'm gonna defer this to the next meeting, to have a mini task force specifically to view all of the alternative energy programs on islands so we can visit them as a group. I think it can be done in one day, but it's just a matter of just knowing what's out there and aware and who the players are. I think that would be a tremendous opportunity. And it would be more beneficial if we all could participate because we feed off of each other's disciplines and what have you. But three of the areas definitely would be Hank Rogers Ranch at Poa. It's essentially like a mini institute. If you've not been there, in fact it is an academic institute that he's the other is NELHA, definitely. And the third, of course, is PGV, just to have an understanding of what they're doing, how they're doing it, and what have you. I think that on this island, of course, there's other things that are happening on other islands, but that would, I think, give strong perspective of what's happening, and even to the point where hopefully we can coordinate some academians that through Will's colleagues to be able to give us even more insight. For example, HNEI and so forth. That day we can incorporate all of that. If we put HCAT, those are the people who are actually building the hydrogen buses on Oahu, and that will give, again, although that's an initiative that's moving forward, we still need to understand what's happening and how it integrates. So keep that in the back of your mind, but that'll be an agenda item for new business for our next meeting. Okay? Yes, Tommy.
We want to make sure that we meet sunshine law considerations. All of us will be there. So
Correct.
we would need an outside public recorder. Better if it's a video recorder so that if a member of the public would like to be inclusive of the process, then we will have that. Otherwise, we really have to consider that we're in violation of the Sunshine Law.
I may disagree a little bit about that because we just had a site visit on one of my other committees, and we did, have our staff there. And there are, depending on the site, sometimes you have to look at whether there's safety considerations if there was going to be a large crowd there. But I'll work with Dot on making sure that we don't violate the Sunshine Law, and if necessary, I will call the Office of Information Practices to get their guidance. Normally, that's what we do, just to make sure we are not in violation of the Sunshine Law.
Okay, so with Tommy's comments and Margaret looking into it, that'll be a discussion item though for your next agenda item. But thank you. And then again, if there are specific input or concerns in regards to that, if the commissioner can either directly contact Margaret or Dot and she'll refer it to Margaret, it would be best, and then it can go out to the rest of the commissioners as far as the matter that was asked to research. Okay, is that all right? Okay, great. So with that being said, old business establishing the working committees. One of the things that, looking at this and to see how purposeful and by the way, what is going to be presented by me is for consideration. This is not cast in stone, guys, okay? And it was, though, especially when it was brought up that, we do need, well, it would be beneficial to have our chairs be, elected once a year. How do we get purposeful work done in a period of time? And so one of the things, looking at it and speaking to Will, was this concept of the three things. And normally speaking, from my perspective, is more than 3 things or initiatives become very difficult to actually accomplish something per se. Now, that being said, the 3 proposed committees for this commission for discussion that after much deliberation and discussion is transportation, and specifically in transportation, what I believe, and again speaking to Will and looking at the information we got from Zonar, is fleet efficiency and mass transit strategy, I mean, as far as the objective. Okay. Now again, these are discussion items. The second would be policy. And policy is where can County of Hawaii leverage existing policies and even recommending new ones. Talking to Will, a lot of what parallel has to occur with projects is ensuring that the policy is available or is set up to be able to support it. And a lot of times policy is not in sync. I'll give you a good example. And actually, Steve, a lot of the conversation was based on your comments in regards to the revolving fund. I mean, it makes so much sense. That's the problem. It makes too much sense. But government is not set up to be able to do it in a manner that can really have impact. Now, does that mean, well, currently, that does not mean it cannot happen. But we need to understand what policy is currently here that is maybe hindering or creating roadblocks. And a lot of times they're unintentional, to be candid, primarily because from the perspective is, you know, they're ensuring that there is no prejudice or self-interest and all these other things that unfortunately gets in the way of some of these things. But that concept makes tremendous amount of sense because personally, if I get efficiency of savings in something, one of two things, hopefully it goes into my savings or it allows me more capital to do something else to get to the next stage of more efficiency and savings. So that concept resonates in a tremendous amount of conversation was done that. I do believe the next committee has the impact of actually helping us to form some of these policies in a demonstratable way. And that is education, outreach, and community. Now, it seems like it's a huge initiative, but after further discussion, they all intertwine. I mean, actually all of them do intertwine to some degree. But in regards to the education, outreach, and community, one of the things that we're looking at is, you know, the good and the bad of our island is actually, I mean, if we had to, we probably could split it up into 4 separate counties. I mean, we have such distinctive geographic and demographics in regards to our county. Not only is it challenging because we're sparsely populated in the rural areas and providing services there are extremely expensive and difficult. But the reality as well is we will have some sort of natural disaster, and it's a matter of when, not if. I mean, it's going to happen. And again, I think we're ill-prepared, I mean, in regards to that. So again, Steve, resonating in your PV community, and I may not be saying it correctly, but the concept of microgrids is imperative from my perspective in understanding that. And in fact, there have been some programs that indicated that that's something we need to migrate towards, but there's issues in grid policy and what have you. That being said, we think the community of Pahala might be right for something like that. And let me explain why. Now again, this is just a matter of discussion. One is we've got the gym that's coming up. That will also be not only a community gym, but it'll be a community gym, but also it'll be a emergency preparedness center. So it'll be a focal point of mobilizing emergency services during a time of emergency. The other thing too is that they're a community that probably is at least 3 to 4 generations deep as far as who live there. And it seems, and again, this is a perspective and it's a discussion, so I'm giving you my personal comments. This is not those of the commission, okay? I just want to be clear on that. That this community is very protective of their lifestyle. which is not a bad thing. As I'm speaking with Will and we're having discussions, perhaps we've been addressing this from the wrong way, meaning that provide opportunities from within so the community gets benefits so that they can decide what they believe it can offer them in the future. For example, the concept of the community PV, that might be an opportunity to set them up on a microgrid and be able to start creating the initiatives in education for the kids, whether it be through STEM projects, micro projects to emulate what that would look like, how it would benefit. Engaging the utilities, Hawaii Energy, because it would be to their benefit when the system is not able to service them in the case of a disaster that it could produce. And then
You were Hawaii Energy Light, right?
right. And then it also, from my perspective, allows hopefully the participation of the community, well actually needs to get them to understand that this is really creating self-sufficiency for them. Okay. Now, you didn't hear me say cheap energy, because no matter what the price of energy is, if you don't have it, it has zero use. But I do believe it can be economically sustainable energy with capacity.
Thank you very much.
Okay? And again, it's more about establishing lifestyle and allowing the community to be able to create more destiny over the choices within their community. Last thing, again, going back to the concept of they're like 3 and 4 deep in generations. Pahala has a strong sense of community and communication. For example, it is one of the few areas left, and this may be a negative connotation, but I'm not doing that to be negative. But it has a strong semblance yet of plantation infrastructure and how things how communities operate. That being said, the ILW Retirees Association essentially is a default community group. And what some of us are familiar with growing up in Hawaii, kumiai. Okay, essentially take care of our own. Something happened, you extend the courtesy, the neighbors still know the neighbors, most of them. Very unusual, I mean, when you think about it. So if auntie and uncle get, nephew, grandchild start learning, because all of us want better for our kids. But at the same time, we don't like it being stuck down our throats like a sausage. We'd like to be able to control the destiny of choices. That's what I envision, talking to Will, of the education, outreach, and community. Now, it sounds like a humongous task, but to be honest, when I look at how the community mobilizes when you have issues like AKP, when you have issues like development, when you have issues of, for example, the latest one in today's paper, like DLNR wanting to fence 10,000 acres, the community polarizes down there. And so, if this concept of creating this energy sustainability and capacity, and creating initiatives like STEM with the children and the schools and what have you, so it involves DOE, it involves the utility, it involves the community, it involves the public stakeholders, and of course we would also involve the legislators from that area to ensure that they're on board, they see the vision, and they understand concept. I believe that that's possible. Now, the next step is, this is a recommendation I would like for leadership in these committees. In the education, outreach, and community, this one's a big one, but believe it or not, reading the commission's year-end, your report that you did to the mayor, you guys have done a lot of the groundwork already, from my perspective. It's now moving into the implementation stage. Not saying that's still not a lot of work, but to me it feeds into that. I'd like to recommend as co-chairs Steve Burns and Tommy Goya, and Marvin Min as a member of that committee. The other thing too, folks, if other commissioners still want to participate, that's fine. But what I'm recommending is the charge of leading the cavalry, so to speak, will be the committee members. the other thing I hope we will take into consideration is inviting community members that have the desire and passion to want to work with that vision, because that creates, I think, a larger stakeholder opportunity. The next one is transportation. Recommendation for chair is Calvin Kohatsu, member Julie and Hank, and as a community contributing member, Tom Brown. And two reasons. Tom has been, his contract is followed, but Tom was contracted to update the mass transit plan, correct? Right. So he was very involved in at least getting it updated. He could be a tremendous resource. And Tom was asked to attend today, but unfortunately he couldn't. But he did say he is willing and wants to participate. Okay. The policy, I'm recommending Steve Bowles to be the chair, and myself and Mike Pepeekeo to be members. Now, let me explain why I recommended the following individuals and the leadership positions. What I attempted to do is leverage your individual and your expertise and your talents in areas where I believe you could benefit the most as far as contributing out to specific outcomes for those areas. And because your experiences, I think, lend to creating quicker, synergy as far as moving it forward. Now, these are my recommendations. How I would see the format moving into play. In page 2 of 7 of the mayor's updated Energy Advisory Commission details, we just need to ensure that whatever our strategy is within the purpose, which is Rule 3, and we understand on how we'll carry it out on the Rule 4. And the reason is, if we tie this in, it becomes easier to create, and I believe it was Tommy or Steve, and guys, I'm sorry if I'm mixing you up, but one of the things that we want to demonstrate that we're accountable in some format. And this is how I believe, now we may have to develop a very simple matrix, and essentially to me it's more a timeline and the objective and where the accomplishments are. So, but that is going to be left to the committees to decide on how to do that. And then, well, we'll cover that now, because the second step is that the committees need to, whatever the committee compositions are or the names of the committees is one aspect. The next aspect is the committees need to decide if they feel that the business of the committees are best done as a task force or within the context of the commission as a committee. Now let me tell you what the two differences are. And by the way, this is not to skirt or not to shorten or be able to bypass sunshine. No, it's because sunshine has very specific requirements. There are times that it's more difficult when you get into the committees to be able, and there's 2 points that I see would be most difficult. One, change of location and time. And second is any discussion or agenda items. If they're not done, or it changes, within 5 days? 6 days. Okay, 6 days, you're gonna have to cancel the meeting. I believe you still need to run and operate the meetings in the spirit of sunshine. So I'm not suggesting but these are just an example of why it may be more flexible to be able to, think about that. Again, a task force, it does not precede the fact that we need to have very specific outcomes of what we need to achieve, because that really is going to be at the end of the day of how we're going to get measured of what we did or didn't. Okay? But that'll be a committee decision as far as how they feel they need to manage that. All right? And as you indicated, Steve, I do believe that there is going to be need to come back to the commission for decision making or reporting on progress, and to see if there's additional assistance that may be needed or resources that the commission needs to see how to be able to support those committees. So you are correct in that. That's my discussion, or actually my presentation, and it's open for discussion at this time.
What was the difference between a task force and a committee?
Sunshine.
But which one has needs more sunshine?
Yes.
Which one
A commission meeting versus a task force meeting.
versus committee?
Well, they're both same committees, but it'll either be a task force committee or it'll be a commission committee. Essentially, it's one and the same, but one, you have to make sure that you're within sunshine compliance. And again, I'm not asking you, I think it'd be very disingenuous in either way not to hold us accountable to sunshine. I'm just saying sunshine does not give you the flexibility sometimes on the other issues. The two things I see that's challenging on the sunshine when you do this is you change the agenda, you change the time, you change the date. And it can, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter, okay? And you're done, you don't have to reschedule the meeting and repost, okay? It's just that got a specific period of time to get this done, and some of these things, I mean, everyone's busy, so, you know, I could see rescheduling times and dates, you know, last minute only because a key person could not attend, and you believe that person needs to attend. And it could be a public member from the community as well that you feel is a strong resource in being able to achieve your, you know, your objectives too. So, did that help address the answer? I mean, to address your question, Julie?
The committee is a commission committee, and it needs to conform with sunshine public notice.
Correct.
Okay.
We, in the last commission, and this kind of is a question for you, Margaret, we had a distinction between investigatory and standing committees. With the distinction of the investigatory committee being that there were only 2 members on it, and it did not need to comply with the Sunshine Law requirements that are what we're trying to avoid as far as being onerous, and scheduling meetings and all of that. Does that still exist, that distinction between those 2 types of committees?
Well, that's the way I understand it, and in terms of, I guess too, it depends on how many members, and if members are members of this committee or a non-member of the committee. But I think there is a little bit more flexibility in a subcommittee, you know, to get the work, you know, it's basically to get the real work done.
You mean a task force?
Well, I call it a subcommittee, but you call it a.
I'm just trying to understand the
Great,
word.
and get clarity, Steve, because I may be interchanging, you know, names that are not interchangeable.
That thing stand for?
Investigatory.
Oh, yeah, that's in there.
That's the one you can have one less than quorum,
Yeah.
and you can have it repeat.
Yeah, it's
Which
in that
one is
handout,
that?
the handout that I
Yeah.
gave you. I
Yeah.
didn't bring it with me.
Oh.
Let me see.
It's in your handout, it's attachment, and it was part of last meeting.
Okay.
So it's in your minutes today,
Yeah.
and it's the last
That's this one here,
handout.
Steve.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, discussed briefly last meeting.
Yeah.
But I think, aside from that, I think what the question is,
Permitted interaction groups.
Yeah,
I think what the question is looking at the difference between committees, investigatory committees, and now this PIG one.
And I guess the bottom line is, what do you guys want to accomplish, you know, and you did talk about different rules. To me, I would focus more on, you know, what you want to accomplish, and then figure out what the best way to have that end result. And then we can work with the proper subcommittee if that's what you want, or talk about it at a regular energy advisory commission. For me personally, it's hard to, like, you guys are talking about, but I don't really know what you guys are wanting to do yet. So to me, it's like, first decide what you want to do, and then you can figure out the best way to accomplish that.
If I may, by the way, the concept is the synergy of in the people within the committee. So if I understand this correctly, a permitted interaction group, right, PIG, we need to establish that? Is that what, one of the things that we would need to do as an official action of the commission?
What?
And let me explain why, I'm seeing. Steve, I think some of those questions need to be addressed within the strategy of the committee's meeting with its groups and deciding, okay, this is what we think we will have you. Because if I understand this correctly, the amount of commission members we have in the committee, I believe should qualify for PIG, because it's less than quorum. So again, within the organization period, Steve, to exactly address those issues and strategize to see how the committee feels. Well, one is based upon our discussion if there's concurrence. And so this is the concept. If there's general consensus as far as the forming of the committees, then what my recommendation would be next, the committees meet to decide based upon the, you know, what the discussion was. Is that objective, make sense, is within the, you know, is there clarity to it or what have you? And then come back and say, okay, you know, this is the way we see us being able to do it. What do our fellow commissioners think and see? And then at that point, it says, we also see in carrying out that mission, this is how we believe business needs to be conducted. So you're right. I mean, it's difficult to be able, I think, to address which one or the other until you actually come up with what Margaret indicated. But again, if I understand it correctly, we could do we could manage this first process under the PIG. And we would not need, would we need to take commission action on that, or would it be more of?
Well, it's already agendized.
Okay, so in other words, if you folks are comfortable, based on our discussion, is to have your committees to meet, and then we come back to the table and say, okay, this is what we, or we see this type of committee structure versus what was presented. I mean, like I said, this was for more of a discussion, but again, the goal, I believe, is we should get this solidified by the next meeting so that we can work on the action items within whatever committee structure we decide have value. Comments, questions?
Just trying to clarify with Margaret again. You're saying that your interpretation, this is more like a subcommittee?
Yeah, well, right here under number 7, that's what you guys are talking about, right? To establish the working committee. I wouldn't get too bogged down with labels. I mean, you know.
Well, the label is being called a PIG.
Well, we just call it a subcommittee. I mean,
Okay.
you know, I mean, Office of Information Practices calls it different, but, you know, just some of the other boards and commissions that I advise, you know, as a group, you guys decide, okay, these are like the 3 big areas. So let's have a subcommittee and let's have members, you know, based on who has the interest. And then you meet outside, whether it's, you know, to do rules or, you know, topic areas that, you know, transportation or some of the things that you guys said. And then once, you know, you meet there, then you would kind of formulate what you have, and then every meeting, what would be agendized would be transportation or Pahala community or whatever your subcommittee is. So then you have at every meeting, and if there is no report, that's fine, but, you know, as a matter of course, Dot would put it on the agenda if there's going to be a report from that subcommittee if you happen to meet and you happen to do something. You know, so there is transparency because you do talk about it if needed at every meeting. It's agendized.
Okay.
That's, I mean, to me, that's the easier way. And if there's no report, fine, go to the next agenda item. And what I can do is, because it might be a little bit confusing right now, I I have given Dot samples of how we don't, we make sure it's agendized properly for every meeting as it relates to a subcommittee. And if you have no report, that's fine, then you just go on to the next one. Is that what you had in mind, or am I like?
Was to maximize the individual committees to be able to do the job they want. Now again, it's a choice. It does not mean you have to do that. But I'm all about choices. So, and if we understand our choices, we can better understand how we're going to conduct ourselves in business. And to me, it's not one way is better than the other. It depends on the group and how they see to carry out their, their mission or their job. That to me is critical.
Is the only way, I'm sorry I'm asking questions, but is the only way to have a community member through the pig route?
No.
No, okay.
No, it's more of what Steve brought up, the interaction with fellow commissioners that we need to understand that has impact on the sunshine law. But that was a good point though, Steve, in regards to that.
What is the quorum number for this commission?
Right now this commission is 9 members.
5.
So 5.
So according to this, then you can have the groups up to 4 then.
But not for different ones. Gotta be same. Yeah. So in other words, if, for example, if Steve felt he wanted you to come to a meeting one time, but then he wanted
You have to go all the time then.
Well, you don't have to go all the time, but the interaction, it can only be with the same person.
I'm just curious.
Otherwise, it links, and that's the part that gets kind of, hairy. And it's easy to unintentionally, get caught up into not complying. That's the unfortunate thing.
Yeah, so I wanted to just throw out my comments and,
Sure.
I looked at like the committees we had previously and at these, and I think the concept of taking on 3 items in the bigger picture is a good concept. And so even if you ask for volunteers, I would volunteer for policy or for the education part, so I'm good with being in the policy group. And when you look at the different committees we had, I think the bulk of it can fit into, these 3 main categories, so that's a good thing.
And again, Mike, you brought up a good point. So, if you believe you've got the time and energy, and so that's kind of like how wide the committee members were spread. Now, I do have a question, and I'm sorry for clarification. Is Julie a commission member or an ex officio? Ex officio. Okay, so.
I don't count.
No. And the only reason why is so the only committee that isn't subject to having, in other words, one other individual could jump on would be transportation. Okay, would be 2 others. But again, the concept was, when I looked at this and talking to Will, looking at you guys' bio, on you guys' previous work experiences, your careers, what you folks are doing, and your community involvement, based on my judgment, okay, and again, it was personal, based on my judgment, I felt this is where I thought you guys could contribute, and your synergy as far as working together could benefit, in getting the results. But again, it's if another commissioner would like to jump on, by all means. I just see a lot of work being done in each one of these in a period of time that we need to accomplish it.
Well, like I said, I support this.
Well, the concept now, so so the next step is actually, if we understand what options are available to us to move forward, is to what I call the investigative period. Committees meet, we discuss what we discussed here to see what was presented and to see if there's alignment, do we have to look at something else or what, That's the dynamics of what the committee members, I think, in leadership need to forecast. This is what we see as objectives, as primary objectives. But it can come in a lot of different ways when the committees meet and have that discussion.
I have a question, Margaret. Meeting up to the third meeting, basically. Will restart after you present things to the commission and have another meeting after that as well? Or is that three meetings in?
No, I think the 3 meetings, no, you're talking about just how you're gonna form it, right?
Yes.
But once it's formed, then you guys meet, then, you agendize, like I told Doc, to agendize every meeting, for the report. So there's no violation when you always have it on the agenda. And if there's something that comes up that's a little bit unique, maybe like, if somebody goes off there's always different possible violations if one member goes off the committee because he can no longer serve on this commission, then other rules might apply. But I can't, generally speaking, I think as long as it's formed and you have it on the agenda, that there might be a report in the future, you should be fine. But if there's, some twist, then I always play the safe prevention, and that's just calling, the director and say, okay, this is how we're doing it, is this correct? And usually they'll say yes, and they say, oh, maybe you should do it this way in the future, so we'll tweak it,
Let me ask you this. If there's a policy subcommittee that's set up, or PIG, first of all, how defined does the mission or the investigation need to be? Because that's a pretty general category. It talks about here that pigs are established to investigate something, a matter relating to the official business of the board. And so I'm wondering how general can the categories be, in terms of establishing what it is that the assignment of this committee is, subcommittee.
Well, you always go back to what's reasonable, and what's fair, what's equitable, and if you have these general categories like transportation, to me, then you might talk about something under the broad category. I think you're okay. If you get off the beaten path where it's not really transportation, then, we might have to look at it. But normally, if you have these broad categories, or you're talking about Pahala area community, that's a huge area, or Ka'us, for example. But there's a lot of things that could fit underneath that broad category.
Do they have to be defined up front when the
I don't
PIG
think
is
so.
formed?
I think the way you guys were talking about it is fine, and then at the agenda items, if you talk about transportation and then you're looking at, electric vehicles or something underneath, that your broad subcategory, then you could put it in the agenda that at this day, it's the transportation subcommittee, but at this meeting, we're gonna talk a little bit more about electric vehicles, or, that might come under that broad category.
Here's a related question. Say for the policy area, and that's the one I'm looking at in terms of the general broad description. Say there's a PIG that's set up with established members, and somebody else on the commission actually has some policy issues they'd like to bring to the forefront. Are they going to be able to do that, given that they're not on the PIG, or is there?
They're going to do that at your next commission meeting, because it's going to be on the agenda.
What would be on the agenda?
The policy committee.
So anything related to policy, or only comments related to what they're speaking about could be brought up at that?
Well, because it's going to be saying policy of this. We're not talking policy of the whole county. We're talking policy as it relates to the Energy Advisory Commission. So.
No, but there's a lot of different big, broad policies out there that
Well, if
Could
you
be
get too
areas
broad, then it might be beyond the scope of what this Energy Advisory Commission.
I think, Steve, it's an excellent question that was kind of
I just
addressed
want to
as well.
reserve the right for the commissioners to have an opportunity.
Oh, absolutely.
Who are not on these groups to bring up things that may
And
not have been thought
that's what
about.
this meeting is for, definitely. It's because
Right.
it's gonna be on the agenda.
Right.
Okay, just clarify.
So at the commission meetings, when the
Report is.
PIG does a report, someone who is not part of that PIG can
Oh,
grow
yeah,
with.
Right.
yes.
Yeah, and Steve, so I thank you for the clarity. So yes, so what happens is collectively when we meet and we do our reports, I'm hoping other commissioners not involved directly will see something maybe that can assist and vice versa. And that's why we meet. But not necessarily all the commissioners saying, oh, you know, you should be doing it. No. Respect the fact of what the committees are doing and see how we can leverage, or if there's an opportunity from one versus the other that will essentially the other. So you're right, and sometimes it'll be a left field thing because it was brought up, but maybe it didn't fit at that point, and now we gotta, okay, do we decide, is it active or is it a parking lot item, whatever, but that's why we do need to meet. We gotta bring back and come to that. You're totally correct. The concept, hopefully though, is we get a little bit more specific and some, for example, education, outreach, and community, you may go 3 or 4 meetings before you really pin down of how you folks are gonna move forward because there's a lot of moving parts in some of that. Some other committees may be more specific and it's easier to give input on how it may touch on what you're doing or you see it as an opportunity, and it doesn't have to be related to the committee you're on. That's why it's important we come together. So you're correct, it's not a, okay, you're in that committee, you don't give it, no. It all bleeds over, I mean, it all touches. It's just hopefully we're trying to get the energy and passion to be able to get specific outcomes within those areas with those specific members. Does that help a little bit, Steve, in addressing your question? Are you comfortable with that format?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to get confirmation that we would have the opportunity to bring up things that may not come up from the committee itself
And that
in relation to the subject matter.
And that being said, one of the goals we're working with Don is collectively when you have your meetings, if we go through this, is you forward her the notes and it becomes available to the committee, the commission members prior to the meeting. So one, if a commission member has an issue they would like to discuss prior, they have that opportunity. Second, when we get to the meeting, we are hopefully going to be using our precious time to address the solutions or get more clarity to understand what was being asked. What I want to try to minimize is not just have dialogue because we're trying to figure it out, but to be a little bit more specific to achieve either, okay, fine, now we understand, so now we do this, you know, the next step, so to speak. I don't want us to stay stagnant, in other words. Because again, everybody's time is way, way too valuable. And I know we're all here because we want to make progress and we want to have something done. How do we get it though so that we can maximize our efforts and our talents? And of course, involve the community so they understand what we're doing as well.
Comment? I think we should choose another acronym. You know, just for perception purposes, not necessarily here in this room, but if we get too comfortable using it outside of our commission meetings, there is perception regarding what the group is, yeah.
Yeah.
So could we call it a subcommittee
Oh,
or
yeah.
rather than, or an action committee?
Call it subcommittee.
Subcommittee?
Okay.
Then we're consistent with what others are doing and we get away from this acronym.
Are we comfortable with that? Sure. Any other comments or?
Wow.
Pigs are tenacious.
Do you want me to fence out or in?
Pardon?
We're gonna do
Oh.
Yeah.
And by the way, the reason I put a time on as far as an end, it wasn't because I want us to end by 12. I wanted wanted to maximize your folks' time. If there's a discussion or business that needs to be conducted, we spend the time that we need. But it helps me to hopefully manage the time so that I can be respectful of yours. So if I'm pushing something through that you feel is too quick, hey, put on the brakes, it's not a problem. It's just that what I'm attempting to do is stay as focused as I can. And by the way, as Will can attest, and Tommy, who knows me long enough, I can go off in many different tangents. So I want to be sure I honor and respect your time, well, Calvin does too. But I want to respect your folks' time as well. Okay, but there are gonna be issues that will take more time. I honestly understand it. At the same time too is I'd like the public to also appreciate at least when business will be conducted so they can manage their time as well. So that's the reasons why. But it was by no means to say 12 o'clock's done and we're finished. But I'm hoping that well, not hoping, it's the goal that the commission, when we meet as a commission, we have very specific items we need to address. We, as reasonably as we can, get information out to fellow commission members prior to the meeting so that there will be capacity to work on the context and content versus more dialogue. And they won't be dialogue, by the way, but it's more purposeful. And please understand, if we go with this concept, the committees meet, we come back next meeting and says, you know, we think, and you know,